Good evening. This video is all centered around the card Panharmonicon. And this card is an extremely powerful card. It comes down on a reasonable rate at 4 mana, which is very important. There are some comparable cards to this that are worth mentioning. There's a new blue Virtue that came out, and that's the dual-sided card. And I believe for 5 mana that comes down as a permanent, and I think it actually will double all permanents entering the battlefield. Non-land permanents, I believe, they double all their triggers, which is kind of a nice thing. It goes a little bit further than Panharmonicon. It is an additional mana, so that is important to mention. There is also Elish Norn, the Mother of Machines. That comes down for an additional mana too. That's a 5 mana card as well. What makes Elish Norn extremely strong, it is dependent on the colors, so it is white. You could only play it in white decks in EDH. And additionally, what that card does for that additional mana, you get a body out of it, a 4/7 body. And it ends up also turning off any enter the battlefield triggers that your opponents have. So I really love that card. It's very good in like my Abzan Landfall deck with Itali and the Gitrog monster. So yeah, just a really cool card. If you're not running those colors, Panharmonicon might be your best fit. I am playing an Azorius deck that does have Panharmonicon and is very artifact centered. I will have to consider that new blue Virtue card out for that deck as well, because doubling my triggers is very important in that particular deck, but doubling my enter the battlefield triggers. So I definitely would consider it. I am using this in my Gruul artifact deck with Maria, the Scholar of Antiquity. And I did stumble upon this particular card when I was playing in the Historic Brawl queue. I was playing against Etali. And Etali is a hell of a card. And having this card in that 99 for Itali it's very highly recommended. I think it's very strong for that deck, and definitely makes it getting one through one Itali is sometimes manageable. It is definitely manageable at times, depending on what is hit, of course. But having an Itali come down with a Panharmonicon is another thing entirely, and that is something to deal with, and it is very difficult to deal with, especially with so many triggers. And I can imagine in a multiplayer format it can kind of get out of hand really fast. So I'd say Panharmonicon is definitely fits that wombo combo type of energy, and that's what kind of this first part 1 is kind of dedicated to. It's the wombo bombo combos that we can find in our different card choices. So the first card, of course, I kind of mentioned that with already. We have Panharmonicon, the 4 mana colorless artifact. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So our enter the battlefield triggers get triggered an additional time. Sometimes we might have permanents on the battlefield already as well. And if their triggered abilities get triggered, then it does additional time. If the criterion is met that it was an artifact or creature that was causing that triggered ability that a permanent you control to trigger. So let's go over our first card that would be absolutely fantastic in our 99 pile of pretty much anything red, maybe red and green. For instance, it would be red and green for me, and with Panharmonicon. So Itali is our first choice. This card is just a monster just by itself. It just gets so much value when it comes down. It's very reasonable to play at 7 mana. And just the hits that you can get off of this, it's kind of just like spinning the wheel, right? And you can get some nice things out of it, and especially if you're playing nice big spells in your deck, you kind of, give yourself a better chance of hitting something nice too. So imagine just all your opponents basically, exiling cards from the top of their library until they exile an online card, and then we can cast that without paying its mana cost. It's very strong. So of course, it does have like an alternate win con here, and it's really quite dumb because basically it puts like an infect monster on the battlefield that's indestructible. And if it's like not contested, if your opponents basically just have an empty board, it basically just slams through and basically will take them out with infect damage, because it reaches the criteria for 10 poison. So overall, just a very strong card. And with a Panharmonicon on the field and this resolving, you're probably just, finishing the game pretty fast. So there's the Itali. Boom. All right. So next one. Another great card that we're just going to love to double their enter the battlefield triggers is the Terastodon. And similarly, a devastating card to opponents. What a great equalizer this is, where, opponent might seem like they really have the game at hand, and a Terastodon comes down, and if their permanents aren't indestructible or they have no way to provide indestructibility to their permanents, you can really swing games in your favor and really change the mood of the game pretty fast with this card. It is definitely worth it. There is at times where you'll be playing in games and maybe you'll be a mana off playing it, which is kind of sad, but I'd say the benefits outweigh the downsides of the cost. The cost is high. There's no doubt about it. That 8 cost versus like say a 7 cost with Itali, sometimes it's a mountain to climb. So we just have to make sure that we're kind of giving the support that the card needs. A lot of maybe additional focus on ramp, really in the early game. We might even have to play, in maybe a more competitive style for a Terastodon. You might have to play like some fast, maybe for fast mana for acceleration. You might have to play Jeweled Lotuses if you really wanted to see it be consistent. But then again, there's a lot of slots. That's just what I'm saying for my Mario deck. I mean, in certain landfall decks, this is going to be bomb. Like probably get up to that mana pretty fast. And this would also be something I should even consider in like maybe my my mutate deck. Now I'm looking at it. Why not? I make a ton of mana, so why not put another body on there that acts as more removal? So. A Terastodon is a 6 mana 2 forest. It's a creature elephant. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents. So that could also be lands as well. For each permanent put into a graveyard this way, its controller puts a 3/3 green elephant creature token on the battlefield. So the trade-off for destroying a permanent, they get a 3/3. All right, so with our Panharmonicon, we're basically just going to be doubling this trigger and taking out 6 permanents rather than 3. What another great inclusion. I'm just kind of going over the bombs, the big bombs, the huge wombos here first. And this is the Portal to Phyrexia, 9 mana colorless artifact. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices 3 creatures. So if we have a Panharmonicon on the field, then they would have to sacrifice 6 creatures. There are some decks that kind of get through a portal, a normal portal, because they play a decent token strategy. Maybe they have like 5 creatures on the battlefield. But with a Panharmonicon, then they have to sacrifice more than 3. So they'd have to sacrifice 6. Your enter the battlefield triggered, because this is an artifact, it meets the criteria. It's entering the battlefield. It triggers the effect, and then so basically instead of 3, it'd be 6. So another great inclusion for Panharmonicon. Just really kind of gets the job done even in a more thorough manner. So we're just loving the portal here. Now let's get into like kind of the overrun creatures, right? So these are kind of our enter the battlefield creatures. I'm sure you know the next one that's coming up. There's a few others too. There's definitely some omissions. This is I believe the other 2. They do similar effects with the overrun, based on like perhaps how many creatures you have on the battlefield. There's slightly different wordings for each of these. This one is just a nice budgety one. You're not gonna have to like spend too much money on this. It's like 50 cents to $1, I think, for End-Raised Forerunners. And it gets the job done. It's a big body, first of all. What's kind of nice about this is that if you're not going to like finish the game outright, it does just provide vigilance to all your creatures. So that's kind of nice. So it's kind of a trade-off. You don't have to basically lose any of your defense, so to speak, or hopefully don't have to worry about losing either way. So hopefully this does get the job done. It's a solid card. I'd say I'm happy to see this in my hand, and I'm not, if I'm able to cast it on a decent rate, I'm going to be very excited that this is in my hand. So overall, super strong card. It's 8 mana total, so it is on the pricey side. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. It's a creature board. When End-Raised Forerunners enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get 2/2, gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. So once again, this is our enter battlefield. You see the kind of the pattern that we're doing here with Panharmonicon is going to be able to double this, so all our creatures will get 4/4 rather than 2/2. So it's just a nice little extra buff with a Panharmonicon on the field. And of course, this is kind of just the big papa here, the Craterhoof Behemoth. This is just a game-changing card, and as long as we've built a semi-reasonable board with creatures, when this card does come down, if we did have additionally like a Panharmonicon, the game is just kind of, it's just, the damage is going to be assessed, and it's, just basically kind of deviating the damage to, finish off the game. I would say a Panharmonicon effect with the Craterhoof Behemoth, I have seen it, I've executed it. I have executed in my Abzan deck with having like an Elish Norm Mother Machine, and then basically casting a Craterhoof. That doubling of that effect, where, and I'll read the card now. So Craterhoof Behemoth is a 5 generic, 3 forest creature beast that has haste. When Craterhoof Behemoth enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get XX until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. Therefore, if you have 5 other creatures on the battlefield, creatures would get the 5/5 until end of turn. That'd be the buff. So the Behemoth would turn into a 10/10. Actually, it would also count the Behemoth itself. So if you had 6 total on the battlefield, including the Behemoth, then it would be a 6/6 addition. So it's pretty awesome, and so it just basically gives you that X buff, and it's so strong. So you can imagine that with like a Panharmonicon doubling that. If you had like that 6 plus 6 plus 6, and then that'd be instead plus 12 plus 12. It's just really kind of heightens your damage. It gets you into a range where you're maybe able to KO 2 opponents, instead of maybe just 1.5. So, but typically, like with this card, and if the deck that you've built, you're going to be able to basically finish off games if you're able to double up that damage. So, just a really sweet card, or get close enough, right? All right, so I believe that was kind of like the, we got a couple more here. I was going to say that's probably the extent of kind of like the bombs that we were going to be playing. I was also I kind of did this backwards. I wanted to kind of talk about the really strong cards that like Panharmonicon benefits, and then kind of maybe get into some of the newer cards that have come out recently, and kind of just like look at them and see maybe how they would benefit from like a Panharmonicon. Gruff Triplets seems like a great option for Panharmonicon, just at a very low cost of very reasonable. 3 generic, 3 colorless, I would say, and then 3 forests, so 6 total. It has trample. When Gruff Triplets enters the battlefield, if it isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. So just by casting this, you're getting the 3/3/3's trample, right? And then when Gruff Triplet dies, put a number of 1/1 counters equal to its power on each creature control named Gruff Triplets. So if we have like any buff effects on the battlefield, like if we were somehow like, letting these creatures, have certain buffs, maybe we put a sword on them, on one of them, and that particular creature dies, then we'd basically be able to put that power on each of the triplets that didn't survive or still lived. So it's just a very interesting card. And on the Panharmonicon, you'd basically you'd be doubling the amount of the tokens that enter the battlefield. So it's pretty sweet. So I believe, if I am reading this correctly, you would be creating 2 additional tokens. So it'd be 5. You would have 5. You'd have the original copy and then the 2 tokens. So that's pretty sweet. We like that. We're doubling our tokens there, and so we get the nice effect of the Panharmonicon. Seems like a good plan to me. So Gruff Triplets, I think, is going to be kind of fun to play, and I have not been sad about playing it either yet. So very cool, and we'll keep trying that one out. Now we're going to kind of talk about some enter the battlefield triggers that kind of will benefit with like fighting. Coggling Udaro kind of fit that bill. Even to another degree, Thorn Mammoth has been pretty devastating. I'd say that's pretty solid as well. If you're looking for like the 6 mana cost, maybe if like 7 is maybe too much, or maybe not something that you have maybe other slots for your 7s. I think like at this time, I do like to enter the battlefield triggers for fighting, and I see like the value of it. I also feel like I can just go over the top a little bit more and a little bit faster, and I maybe would prefer that. So I think like maybe one of these would be good in my deck, like a enter the battlefield in fight, like a target creature I don't control. So the choices would be between that and like just the regular Kogla. I like both of them. I do like the stats of the Udaro has a 7 toughness, and then it does have this kind of effect where you can kind of destroy a target artifact or enchantment, basically from, I believe that'd be even an instant speed, and it replaces your card, so it's not so bad. I think I do like just the regular OG Kogla, because I do like that once this sticks and it starts attacking, then we can actually keep destroying the artifacts and enchantments that are on the battlefield. So I feel that's kind of a nice feature. The fact that you can make it indestructible by returning a human hand, that's kind of nice too. But overall, I think I just like the regular Kogla. I feel like I just kind of like the effect that, I can start taking out enchantments and artifacts with it attacks. I think that's a really nice feature that this particular card doesn't have. The haste is nice too, it is nice, but I do like this one. I like it a lot. I think it's really menacing. I think it's very threatening too. So I like that about the Kogla. Here's just some other kind of, just like kind of features like the Panharmonicon, just value stuff where, it could double up like our looting effects, which is nice. So like our Scrapwork Mug could get like an additional trigger. This one would be very fun for Panharmonicon too. The price statue, because we'd get that like additional treasure token. So it's just like more value, just like an abundance of value. It's basically, it like turns into like a free spell, so it's just really interesting, just very interesting, being able to create things, in the very, very efficient manner is kind of what I'm interested in. So like, for instance, just having a Panharmonicon and playing a prize statue it just seems like the world for me. It just seems just like a very nice, benefit from playing the Panharmonicon in the deck. So having that additional treasure on top of the one you already create is really nice. Here's just another really sweet Panharmonicon, like, benefit. Would be something like the Blossoming Tortoise, where not only are we getting like a double look for land, which sounds really good. I'm kind of curious like how these triggers like kind of stacks. It's probably, you have to probably just do one at a time before. So basically mill the 3 if a land is milled, or if you had one in your graveyard, or prior to that, that would return, and then go ahead and mill 3 again. Probably don't mill 6, and then take 2 from that group. So that's kind of nice. You get to double those triggers up, and hopefully get a couple lands. So that's kind of nice. So we do definitely like the tortoise for the Panharmonicon. And additionally, here's also the Solemn Simulacrum. Very similar kind of effect, where entering the battlefield, and we get to fetch up a land for our library, put on the battlefield, and then shuffle. So just a very cool. We're going to be looking at a couple lands and then shuffling our deck with Panharmonicon. We're going to be able to find 2 instead of 1. So just like a really nice value there for us. Very nice. And this just brings us to like kind of the last card I wanted to talk about, and it's one of my favorite cards right now. It does have an enter the battlefield text to it involved, which just also makes it just like super awesome. But this thing is just whacked. It's totally whacked out. The Vorinclex is a 3 colorless, 2 forest. It's a legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor, trample and reach. When Vorinclex enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle. So there's some different forest cards that people like to find. I think there's one that's like the gingerbread forest, or there's one that has like a gingerbread house on it. It's like there's a couple different forests that you can find that are like a little bit, have value to them. You could just find some regular forests in your deck. And of course with Panharmonicon, you're going to be able to find 4. So that's really cool. But this really isn't really why I was bringing this card out. It does have some Panharmonicon synergy. It's really just, I just wanted to talk about it because for the 6 mana, 2 forests, exile Vorinclex, then return to the battlefield, transform under its owner's control, activate only as a sorcery. It is also a 6/6 for that nice rate of 3 colors too. So it's a great henge enabler. It just crosses all the dots. Now, why this card is so fun, and this would not trigger a Panharmonicon because it's not a creature artifact. However, for our deck, the one I've been kind of referencing in the last 2 videos is basically a Graveyard Matters Gruul deck. And we are playing a lot of creatures. So the very first chapter of this is just devastating. Like, milled 10 cards, then put up to 2 creature cards from among them milled onto the battlefield. So it's just an incredible amount of value. You're putting so much into your graveyard, and it just meets all that criteria that I love. All the things I need. I need that graveyard to be juicy. And if I don't get the best chapter 1, I'll at least have something to fall back on. But from my experience, like I have definitely been having a great time with chapter 1. I've seen a lot of opponents playing this card. They're having a lot of success too with it. The chapter 1 is very strong. You're going to be able to get those nice enter the battlefield creatures onto your battlefield, up to 2. So your 2 strongest choices, of course. And then you're going to be swimming from there. It's fantastic. So we're really just focusing on kind of resolving that grand evolution piece and going from there. And there's the additional text is to add some counters that beefs up your creatures, and then the 3rd chapter is for 1. We can pay 1 for a creature to fight another target creature we don't control for the low cost of 1. So, and then of course it just turns back into a Vorinclex. So sweet, man. So that is the Vorinclex. And it is not the last card either. So there is more. There is more. Yes, I should have saved the Vorinclex for last. But hey, Terror of the Peaks isn't that bad either. And Terror of the Peaks is just another sweet enter the battlefield type of card where it's also going to gain a lot of value from your other creatures entering the battlefield as well. So With the Panharmonicon, it's a little bit of a different, as long as we're bringing in permanents to the battlefield and it triggers a permanent of ours to trigger, they trigger an additional time. So this would meet that criteria if we did cast another creature and it entered the battlefield and it Terror of the Peaks, of course, sees that creature. The Panharmonicon will let that trigger be activated again with the same target. So, for instance, if we cast a Cityscape Leveler, it's going to do this Terror of the Peaks is going to see the 8 damage, and then the Panharmonicon will see that triggered ability, and that triggered ability will trigger an additional time. So that's the text. And that's basically what we're going to be doing with the Panharmonicon. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and this will be kind of part 1 of the wombo combos that we see in Magic and that we love, and maybe ones that maybe you haven't seen yet. So maybe this is one that maybe is new to you. So yeah, we're looking forward to rolling out a couple more videos about this. So thanks a lot. Bye.